Well, hello, world. This is episode one of the Unfiltered Race Fans Only podcast. I'm Alan. This is my buddy on the other side of the screen here, Blake. And
How y'all
last
doing?
time you just got to hear Blake's voice. This time you get to see his face. So I know it's very, yep,
Something.
it's
Something.
something, right? So we've been friends for a while, collected diecast together. Traded cars back and forth, and we're a part of a Facebook group, for other racing fans. And this is something you and I've wanted to do for the last, 18 to 20 months. I let you
Yeah.
down last year. We were supposed to be doing that this year. We would have had a lot of fun talking. I mean, there's a lot of content this year we could have been talking about already, the charters and stuff. So we'll get into it because obviously it's not all settled for the upcoming season. Some people may be out of jobs. We'll see what happens with this as the court case
Sounds
moves
like it.
forward. But to give anybody listening some backstory, my family grew up in Bristol, Tennessee, right near the Bristol racetrack. So I spent a lot of time at that racetrack as a kid. My parents had the tickets where you basically had to be willed the tickets. So, and I've been going to races ever since. I've been to, I think, 10 or 12 tracks, short tracks and big tracks, super speedways. And in that 30 years, I've been a diehard fan. I started with Kowicki till he passed, and then I got an opportunity to meet Jeff Gordon, thanks to my mom, who's no longer with me, when she worked for McDonald's and the company that made all the bread. They would get different, VIP fan events, things like that. And so one of the things she got to do was go to one of the VIP, hospitality tents and met him. And I've actually got to have one of the few things I have for Gordon with her from her on there is up there signed, rookie year hat. So she got me hooked on him, and I've been following ever since. What about you, Blake?
Uh, I'm from Northern Kentucky. Uh, my dad sat me down at 3 years old, said, pick a car. I picked I thought that Battlestar looked pretty cool on the 28 car, and he went out and won his first race.
All right.
I've been a fan ever since. Obviously, have had to jump through many different drivers due to deaths and
Yep. Same here.
Davey Allison, Kenny Irwin, so on. So uh, have a driver in Kyle Larson now, but been in this since I was 3 years old. So
I thought the art in the back
definitely,
meant you were a fan of, Busher. You were a fan of, disappointments there.
oh yeah. Well, fan of disappointments for most of my life with racing. Definitely with Larson, I finally got to see some triumph for once.
All right. So we will do our best to get better at this. But we have a lot we want to talk about, not just today, but through, as we get towards the start of next season. We've been working to make some different topics, and, um, this podcast is our our vision of what we would like to see. We've both called into shows like Dave Moody's and, the morning drive and so forth. And the hosts, I'm not going to say they're not all unable to be objective, but more often than not, they cut the fan off. They don't let the fan really get their point out,
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
some of them berate the fan. And when they have some decent conversation, or in some instances, it seems like they selectively pick fans who are maybe not as educated on the sport as, I think you and I are. We consume the sport in a ton of different ways now, thanks to the way technology's evolved, and between the podcasts and the Twitter and now X and so forth. So um, we wanted to do this together as friends, to put our, share our knowledge on what we think about the event from a true fan's perspective, not anybody who has invested interest in the sport. We don't work for NASCAR, have nothing to do with it. We're just two fans who fell in love with fast cars, beating and banging, passionate drivers with personality. Some of that's gone now, but some of it's still present with some of the drivers. And uh, so, yeah, that's what we're going to try and do. And as we get better at this, hopefully we'll bring in some of our friends. so
Yep.
they can tell us how we sound like idiots and where we're wrong. Um, you know,
We're never wrong.
and
Ever.
if it becomes popular, great. But this is not intended, at least for me, to be like a job. It's supposed to just be fun.
Yep.
I've
Just
been
for
doing
fun.
this for the last couple of years, in non-audio and recorded format, where we just call each other, text throughout the race, call after the race, and talk about it throughout the week. Hey, did you listen to this? And what do you think about that? So this is just us taking that and putting it out there to see what the other fans who feel neglected, that the sports kind of changed and left them behind, uh, see if they agree or maybe even want to be a part of it at some point. So anything you want to say?
Uh, I'm ready to dive in.
All right, let's do it.
Maybe the championship this past week.
Yep. So let's start with the soup du jour.
Yeah.
Everybody seems to be pissed off about the championship. They all think, the majority seem to, at least fan wise, seem to think that Joey is an undeserving champion. So we'll get to that. Uh, and we'll start, I guess I'll let you go first. What do you think?
I think at first going into the final round, I mean, he won Vegas and the stats were there that they they win that first race of round eight. They had 3 weeks to prepare, and you had to take heed to that. He won Martinsville back in, what was it, 18,
Mm-hmm.
and you went out and kicked your butt at Homestead. He won Vegas and in 22, went out and kicked your butt at Phoenix. Like the stats are there, the knowledge is there. So we said last week on episode 0, it was either going to be him or Blaney, and it was spot on. But as far as him being the champion, everybody's saying, well, he's got the worst average finish ever of a champion. Maybe so, but he won 4 races and the All Star race, second most on the season to Kyle Larson. So how can you say that it was a hoax of a champion when he's got the second most wins on the season? Yes, the average finish wasn't there, but outside of that, he he played the same that everybody else did. He just figured it out.
Yep. And so I'm in 100% agreement with you. I was wondering when we were going to, meet up and talk about this after last week, if either one of us would be team illegitimate, just depending on how things went. Um, I don't have a driver in the fight anymore. Obviously, your guy,
Yeah,
winningest driver this season. If you look at the stat sheets, he leads in damn near every category except for maybe five or six. If you're looking at a season long point standing, I know you did some calculations, and even there he comes up short. But I mean, by far, he had the best season overall. You can't, in terms of statistical, he had another one of those seasons similar to his championship season, and it's really a
it was
season
pretty
of what could have
magical.
been in a lot of ways for Larson. If he's a little bit more patient at Homestead, then he's in the final four. I don't know that they didn't look like they had anything for the Penske drivers anyway. HMS said they had been
There
working
was
on.
nobody beat those 2 cars.
Yeah, they said they'd been working on this for like since last year. Well, if this is the best you've done over a year as a HMS fan, I'm really worried because those Penske cars can roll the corner. I mean, it's a damn beautiful thing to watch.
I,
It almost
I
reminds
will
me of the way.
say,
Yeah, go ahead.
I will say they did get way better from the spring.
Yeah,
I don't
definitely.
think
I mean, they
Larson.
were
I
in
don't think Larson.
contention
I
for
don't think
sure.
he cracked the top 10 in the spring. So
Yeah.
obviously they did make some gain, but still was nowhere near enough.
When I think of different tracks and different strengths, so one of the things that stands out to me, at least with Phoenix, and you look at it, you've seen it for the last, at least for the next gen era, has since it started there, and you could see it leading up to it, with Brad Keselowski there, Joey Logano there, and Blaney there, all have been strong under the Penske banner in the Gen 6. They can roll the corners there, similar to, and Blaney especially, the way they run that track there reminds me a lot of how Kyle Busch knows the feel he needs for Bristol, or how Denny Hamlin knows what N. Johnson and Gordon all knew what they needed to run Martinsville, and now Blaney's really picked that up. But they just know exactly what they need when they go down there, put the car in the corner, and to get that bite off and go. They just seem to rotate it so much better. And so, the complaint that certain tracks favor certain drivers, I mean, obviously we saw that with the way the old chase laid out and Jimmy Johnson's dominance. But back to our original point, is Joey a deserving champion? So leading up to our conversation, I grabbed some stats. In addition to what you said, where he's got the second most wins of anybody on the season, if you add in the All Star race, either way he's there. But in the 11 years we've had this format, we've had 25 drivers win in the postseason, just the postseason, whether or not they're a part of it or not. There's only been 25 drivers out of the roughly 60 that have competed. Joey Logano tops wins amongst everybody. He has a winning percentage of 13.6, him and the 22 team in that era. Harvick is second with 11%. Larson ranks third at 10%. Then Truex, then Hamlin, then Kyle Busch, Keselowski, Chase Elliott, and Blaney. So I think from if you're a numbers person, like you and I like to talk about a lot, the statistical stuff, if somebody had gone back and really thought about it, if Joey Logano makes the playoffs, he wins 13% of the races. He's a
That's
fairly
insane.
he is the Jimmy Johnson of this system in reality.
Yep.
Jimmy Johnson would win 4 to 5 races of the chase every year and just crush his opponents. Well, if Joey's winning 13.6% of the races and his closest competitors are lagging by 4 or 5 behind that in terms of totality, the next closest ones are 11. So they've got 4 races, a 4 race deficit, and he's been doing it for 11 years. Of that 11-year span, he's made the playoffs 6 times, and inside that 6 times, he's completed. He's basically won the Super Bowl
You mean
50% of the time.
he made the Final Four 6 times?
No, he's made the playoffs 6 times out of 11 years. He hasn't
He's
made the
only made it
final.
6 times.
He's only made it 6 times. He
Oh,
didn't.
okay.
Yeah, he
Okay.
didn't make it in 2015, but he won 6 races, which is insane that he did make it in 2015. If he had won, because if he won, remember we were talking earlier, he swept the round
Yeah.
going into the final four, and if he had, or leading into the final 8, if he had, or
Yeah.
part of it, yeah, and if he had been in it, I'm fairly confident he would have made the final four. But they
Yeah.
did perform well enough getting there, and it's insane when you think about it. They are postseason magic. They're in a lot of ways, and where Jimmy and Chad were so good together, where to me Joey has separated himself in that conversation, especially in this era. Totally different eras, but Joey won his first championship with Todd Gordon. Then he won the next 2 with Paul Wolfe. And we saw what Chad and Jimmy could do separately. They weren't as good either one. They were
No.
magic together, where Joey has proved he can repeat this in a similar way. To me, he's actually more in line with a Jeff Gordon, where Gordon lost Ray Evernham, and then in 2001 he paired up with a new crew chief with Loomis and turned around and won. And so that to me even ranks him higher. As much as I only have 2 cars in my collection that are Joey, and it's about to be 3, and it's over on the
Yeah.
winner take all shelf. He's not my guy, but his talent is undeniable. Just how you know when you give him an opportunity, that's the worst thing you can do. And
Yep.
you and I said it back when Bowman got ruled illegal. I'm like, that was a mistake. Letting him back in, it
Yep.
was a mistake, because
Yep.
they will live to regret that. And literally, he won the next race. And like, yep,
And again, and we spoke on the phone about this earlier, but for our audience, people are really upset about his average and all that stuff. But you go back to Richmond, Austin Dillon about to win a race, caution comes out. Joey Logano winds up on the outside and eats his lunch. Just has the restart that Austin doesn't know how to have, and he's
yep,
about to win that race, and Austin loses his mind. If he wins that race, we're not talking about this right now because
no,
he doesn't miss the upper roval, because if everything stays the same, which you know, if he wins that race, stuff changes, whatever. But if he wins that race and everything stays the same, the roll still happens the way it happens. We're talking about Reddick being put back in, not Logano.
Yeah.
Logano missed by 4 points. Well, winning Richmond gives him five.
Yep.
So then you got another
And it would have increased
deal.
his seating potentially. We'd have to go back and look
Yes.
at it, but it probably would have increased his seating. So there's additional bonus points there.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean,
Potential. Yep. So we're just a five at least. You got 5 points there.
yeah,
So he makes it into the round of eight by himself. And then, now we're talking about a driver that's won 5 races in the All Star race. I mean, that one little craziness of Austin Dillon, changed the season and the outlook of the championship. You know, I wonder if Logano doesn't miss and Bowman just didn't make it on his own, you know, if we're still having this conversation.
yeah. And the other thing to think about is so when you back to the point of Richmond, the Richmond win, if he had gotten to keep that, I mean, that restart he had, think about the restart he had to win this race and think about the restarts he's had in the past. Just like Kyle Busch, when they have good cars, those two are some of the absolute best on restarts. Kyle Larson's another one that as he's gotten, gotten better equipment, going from the outside three wide to the inside to the lead, like there's only 4 or 5 guys you usually see that from. And Joey's one of them that if you give him an opportunity and again, you dangle that carry out and he knows this is my one shot, it's hell or high water. I mean, it's what got him wrecked in 2016 that allowed Johnson to get his 7th championship. He saw that
Yep.
opportunity with Edwards, whether that caution should ever happen or not. He's there,
Yep.
and he went. He was not letting up. And I think the same thing would have happened this weekend if they had been able to get to him and pinch him. It's all or nothing. Like I
Oh
didn't.
yeah.
He didn't come there to run second. So, and you can go back and look at that, and you can look at a ton of his other restarts. Like he knows how to maximize it. And had that restart, if Blaney had a good restart, but Tyler Reddick pinched him off. And if Reddick doesn't pinch him off, they might come out the end of that corner side by side or nose to tail, and it ends up being a different story. It still ends up being a Penske championship. Like I don't think
Oh yeah.
anybody had anything for those two, but
No.
um, yeah, I mean, I
We know Reddick didn't have nothing for anybody
no, I was
yesterday.
honestly very
And
surprised. And Denny Hamlin post race said, that they felt like they were playing with like a sprained ankle, essentially. I personally don't agree with that. You had a JGR car up there spanking the field the majority of the race until it was time to, all or nothing. And then I don't know what happened. I don't know if they just didn't keep up with the adjustments or what, but they clearly had a good car. So, and he's been good there before. And Reddick was good in the spring. So I don't know what happened to Toyota, but I was surprised that they weren't stronger, knowing that literally they have one bullet. You only have to polish on one bullet. Penske had two, and they had 3 weeks a head start. And yeah, you could look at that, but I mean, they came in there having to defeat each other and settle it between themselves, and the other guys only had to focus on one bullet for Chevy, one bullet for Toyota, and they really had nothing for them.
no, they didn't. And I think if you rerun the race next week, it's the same outcome. I mean, maybe Blaney instead of Logano,
Yep.
but because of qualifying or pistol selection or whatever. But you're not beating the Penske cars without some sort of something causing damage to them or something at that track right now. I mean,
Yeah.
Blaney's finished second there 3 years in a row in the fall. I'm not sure of the spring stats. I think you told me he's finished second in the spring this year,
I want
but
to say that's right, but I mean, he's finished there. He's never finished outside the top five there. So, I
in
mean,
the in the
that's
in this car or
in the last, I
probably
want to
just this
say,
car.
I think since they started going there for the championship playoff, they said he
Yeah,
hasn't finished outside the top five there. I can go look, but I mean, it's insane.
yeah, that's
And
a
he's
crazy
he's
stat.
basically doing the same thing in Martinsville now. Like if he goes to Martinsville and needs to win, you basically it all
He
roads go through him,
he's
like
the
they
new
used to have to
Denny
go
Hamlin
through.
of Martinsville.
Yeah, yep. He's found whatever Denny Hamlin couldn't at Martinsville.
Yeah,
That feel he needs, just kind of again like Kyle Busch had at Bristol for a long time, where he could just rotate that corner and pick and choose his lines. Same
yeah.
thing. Um,
Speaking of the Kyle Busch, the streak is over.
yep, I had a brief moment of sadness for him.
Yep, I
Poor
did too.
Candyman. I feel bad for him. But when I was looking at those stats for who's recorded what on the most wins, Kyle has 9 playoff, wins and since this system came along. But unless RCR finds something, I think that's where that stat's going to end for him. Um,
Yeah, I
Truex
do see
ended,
him making
Harvick's
the
ended.
playoffs next year, though.
I don't know.
You look back at this year, and he was solidly inside. He was above Ty Gibbs, and
Yeah,
then it was like a self implosion week in week out. He's running third at Gateway, and he gets in a piston match with Larson. He's running.
a lot of it I
Uh,
feel kind of the same way that I feel about it's he's getting towards this end, and it almost in a way reminds me of Jimmy Johnson's final year in 2020. He had several opportunities to win where Jimmy allowed himself to get out of what made Jimmy Johnson, and he started making rookie mistakes. And you kind of see the same thing with Kyle. He wrecked under Blaney, got loose at what was that Nashville when they were going through the corner when he got loose, got
I
under
think
there and
so.
split.
It was either
Uh,
Nashville or Iowa.
he just put himself in places that you don't normally see Kyle Busch put himself, or where Kyle Busch is used to being able to do things with the car that it maybe doesn't do anymore. That if he takes just driving it at 90%, he still wins it. I mean, for sure, there was plenty of chances he had to win this year. I just don't know how many more they're going to get unless something changes with the car, because each iteration of the year
He does seem to fall a
he
little bit
falls
every
off a
year.
little bit, but also everybody gets better as this car's evolved. We had a bunch of, and we still had a bunch of winners this year, but we had a very even playing field the first year. Everything kind of tightened up the second year. It's really tightened up the third, and in 2020. So yeah, 22, 23. Now in the third year, it's really tightened up. The surprising thing to me is how well Ford did. I mean, Ford, you couldn't find them in the first 13 races this year.
No, I didn't
All-star,
think he
they
had
get
a
that
chance.
all-star race test. Joey wins the all-star race. They go on to win 13, including the all-star races to close out the season. The driver's title, the team owner's title, and I haven't seen the manufacturer points yet to see. They weren't updated the other day, but they were close.
I
They were
would
within like
they
20
they'd
points.
have if they didn't win, I'd be surprised.
But the fact that they had finished 1-2, I feel like, let's see, while we're talking, let's see where they netted out. But they should have come really close to capturing, and they almost got a three-peat. If it wasn't for Justin refusing to lose and pinching them off in the final corner there on that restart, Cole Custer is probably your champion. Ford came up 34 points short. So from being out in the woods to 34 points short with 12 wins, not including the All-Star, to Chevy's 15 and Toyota's 9, that's very impressive, a very impressive turnaround.
That is very impressive.
Um, and they took
Just
positions
if,
one and
if
two.
they would have just had just a slight better start, they definitely won that title.
Yeah.
Uh,
And just think that was the first year of this car. Now they can polish and improve on it. The Cup guys, all the parts underneath are pretty much the same. So I don't know what Chevy's going to do, because we're heading into the fourth year of the Camaro. I don't know what
the last
magic there
year
is
as
left to
well.
get into it. I'm actually a little worried for Chevy, truthfully, because what's
Yeah,
left you're going to get out of it that are you're going
and
to have to
it's got to be the
match.
last year as well.
Yeah, and yeah, so that'll be another thing like we can talk about as the off season goes, is what is Chevy going to do? We're going to run the Corvette, we're going to switch to Cadillac, we're going to run the Malibu. Really doesn't even look like it.
Yeah, it's not
It'd
a
be,
race
it'd be
car.
kind of like the Ford going back to the Fusion. Like I don't think that's a direction you want to
Yeah,
go.
it's basically like you're running the Camry, I guess. For Chevrolet.
So
I mean, I guess we did do it for years, and we had
we could. It just doesn't do
touring
anything for you
sedans for a
visually
long
to
time.
like
Yeah,
Mark Martin said in his podcast, he wants the cars to look sexy. I don't foresee a Malibu getting my get my attention. Like, damn,
I
that's
guess
a
unless
good
they do a
car.
redesign.
They could, but I don't think so.
So, so you brought up the lower series there for a second.
Yeah,
We got to touch the truck series for just a second.
go ahead.
We Christian Eckes at Martinsville.
What an idiot.
He's got to be going back and going, I'm an idiot. I mean, he wouldn't have won anyway the championship, but he would have had second, not third.
Well,
You had the chance to let was it Taylor Gray?
yeah,
There's two of them, so I get confused.
yeah,
So you got a chance to let Taylor Gray win the race, get in the final four, and kick Ty Majeski out.
yep,
Then you boot him out of the way just because you have to have that grandfather clock. One of the biggest stupid moves I've seen in a long time.
yeah. That was the difference between racing experience, short-sighted versus long-sighted. Like, I
Yeah,
think, I mean, these events are extremely hard to win. So I don't know that I would have I would have just, I don't know that I wouldn't have gone for it either. But if I'm his spotter or his crew chief, and I'm trying to pick how I want to decide the final race, I want the lesser opponents I can line up, you know.
yeah.
And going into it, like it's the same
Taylor's never
thing for
won a
Cup.
race,
Like
right?
going into it, they had to be thinking, okay, for the Cup guys, all right, we let Joey Logano in, but he hasn't been really good all season, so we probably don't have to worry about him, which was their mistake for probably thinking.
And
But Reddick came off of a win, Blaney came off of a win. Those two were probably thinking they're going to decide themselves because Byron hasn't won since April. And so you look at it down in the truck series, and again, it's that leadership of trying to, you don't want to point shave and you don't want to give up races, but at the same time, if you don't have to have it and you're comfortable, then you should be thinking long term, who would I rather have to beat? Somebody I already prove I can beat, or somebody who is an unknown quantity and I just gave a motivation to come back in there and I put my worst competition in there, and then ultimately they go in there and spank you, which is worse. Like, he didn't just
yeah,
win, he won like with a beatdown.
yeah. Well, I mean, the only reason Taylor Gray was there is because of tire strategy, and he should have known that, and he should have looked at his competition. Ty Majeski's really good on flat tracks, just how it is,
Yep.
and you let him in the round of four with one race at a flat track.
Yep.
So, but at the same token, you're talking about winning the race. Justin Allgaier, seasoned veteran, he had the win in sight, and he let it go at Phoenix. So because the championship, the guy passing him couldn't win the championship, so let him go, cruise in for second, and win your first championship.
Yep. He,
I
he
know
understood,
he
like,
had a
okay.
spotter in his ear, but I mean that just shows the age matters sometimes.
Yep, having been there makes a difference. I think that came into play obviously with Joey and them. They didn't get rattled like some others would have when they had the issue with the pit crewman or the slow stop. The dominoes. I mean, you can't give Penske enough credit. They literally basically took all the guys and shifted them all by one, got a backup guy off the bench, and still managed to put them 1-2 to the finish line. So then, so we're in agreement. Joey definitely deserving champion, especially when you take this. I used to not like this format, but I didn't do my own homework and go look at the way they said they wanted it to be like the NFL, and they've actually done that. If you look at comparing the championship format we have today, which in the state of the sport they said isn't going anywhere.
Just needs one change.
Yep, it needs some tweaks, but overall it's really not awful. Especially it they said they wanted to prioritize winning. I go back to that first stat. Joey Logano has won 15 playoff races out of the 110, 13.6%. He's doing exactly what it was designed to do, win. And the years that he's in it, he wins a lot. 3, 4, 4, 5. He wins a bunch of races the years that he qualifies for it and does exactly what
Yep.
the system is designed to do, which is like I said, he had a 17th place average finish, a 15th place average finish. Like, the average finishes don't matter in this. It's about being your best when it matters the most.
Yep.
which as a lifelong fan, that could be irritating. I mean, I think all the time about what could have been had Jeff Gordon not hired Jimmy Johnson, how many championships he'd have right now, things like that.
If
But
only he wasn't in the Busch Series racing against him a couple times,
yep.
he would have never known.
So when NASCAR started the playoff era, if you will, or not the playoff era, but the separation where we go from regular points to
Playoff
not a
points.
winner, some type. We'll just call it playoffs. But then when they started the chase, they included 23% of the field. And in 2007, when they moved to 12 drivers, it was 28% of the field. And this is still back when we had 43 cars regularly and finances were good in the world.
Yep.
Now it's reduced to 40 on at best on a good day. Usually it's an average of 36. And now we're at
Yep.
16 cars. If you compare that to every other stick and ball, which is what most fans hate, but if we're trying to say our format is like every other stick and ball sport, Major League
It
Baseball
is.
puts in 12 teams into the World Series, six from each side out of 30, 40%. So they're higher. They're actually putting in more. NFL puts in 32 and they do 14, 7-7 at 43%. And the NBA does 16 of their teams out of 30 at 53% of their, playoff makeup. So
Right.
we're
So we're there.
we're at 42%. So we're right in between that sweet spot. We're not as extreme as the NBA, but we're right where they want to be for the NFL 1-to-1 comparison. The question really becomes, is it achievable? We got about 7 minutes left before we have to
All
stop.
right.
Is it achievable to get to where Brian France thought they could get when they started this, which was, at the we were when they started the chase, we were at the height of the money, the ratings, and everything.
Selling out every
Yep.
tractor
You
was.
know, Bristol sat 160,000 fans. You and I were there this time, and you've been since then. Where now it's actually a much better experience because you don't have
It
people
is.
on top of each other. But it does suck that it's not 100. I used to talk to people about, like, when I got married, I took my wife to that race. That was the race, in my opinion. To If
Yep.
you don't like this race, NASCAR is not for you. 160,000 people, 43 cars with 800 horsepower. So, you got over 40,000 horsepower shaking the stands and everything. Something happens, and it's literally like you're going blind from the electric flashes and everything back then before social media and camera phones and everything. And now
Yep.
you see probably 40,000 less at that track. Richmond only
I
has
believe it's
one stretch.
120,000 now.
Yep. Richmond, for example, the whole backstretch is gone. I used to sit in the backstretch all the time. It's like only part of turn two, part of turn four, and the front stretch, which is not the best part of the track, in my opinion. So the question is, do you think is it possible to fix the playoffs where enough people will accept it to bring NASCAR up to where they thought it could be, where it was the show on Sunday?
Well, I think me and you saw. I don't know who put it out, but it's magical. This new format somebody came up with, same style,
Yep.
but instead of a one race championship, it's a one race wild card. So it's still 10 races, and you have 16 cars. And the first race, the top eight in your seating are locked in. They cannot fall out of the playoffs. But the you have one race, 8 cars trying to make for 4 spots. I think that is a great idea. And then the next, you get a three race championship. So I
There.
think that's a great idea, and hopefully they do it because
Yeah, I'm going to share
that.
that screen real quick. Anybody who
uh,
hasn't seen this tweet, this is what Blake and I are talking about here. Are you able to see it, Blake? Because if you can, they can.
it's saying it started screen sharing us. Yep, there it is.
Okay. So this is what we're talking about, where you have a wild card entry. So there's one race. We don't know where it would be, but the top 8 in points are locked in. The remaining 8 are gonna 4 of them are going home in the very first race.
I'm
And
assuming you
from
would do
there,
that just like the Final Four race. You top four, your top four of those 8, you're in.
yep, best 4 finishers move on, and then from there they're seeded by points. But then you have to Denny Hamlin's point, you get a better body of work and this was done
Yep.
by Estep. That's who it is, Eric Estep, and he does Out of the Groove. Great content.
Okay. Great content.
Want to give him content, credit. I don't want to. I don't know who the AD is, but I
Yeah,
don't
I didn't know
want
where it
to
was
take.
from. So
I didn't want to take credit for something. We didn't come up with this. I just saw it, and you saw it, and we both agree that it's a really good concept, and it gives you a better body of work to compare your champion, so that because things do happen. I mean, you saw it, and at Phoenix on was it Friday? No, Saturday. No, Friday's practice. That one car had an oil problem, put down oil on the track before the spotters could even tell them. Here comes Maryland in the 20 Owners Championship battle. Almirola destroys the car. Justin and Jones destroy their cars, and they got to pull
yep.
out backups. And they literally only have two backups for all of JRM. So if
And
there's
then
any
use
other
both of them.
problems, like,
You got
and
to use somebody's car from somewhere else.
yep. So you went from a car that you prepared for weeks or months to a car that you pulled out of the trailer and you hope you have a fighting chance with. That's crazy. So, but that kind of takes the wildness out of it, or the randomness. Which I will say, I agreed with Jordan on the teardown. When Jeff was losing his mind. I think this is the first time I truly thought Jeff sounded like an idiot, and I respect the
Yeah,
hell out of. Normally, I'm on Team Jeff every day of the week. I was
I
Team Chaos,
usually am
but
too.
Jeff sounded like like a salty Sally. He was just so bitter. Which is funny because he's always hyped not 2 weeks ago he was hyping the awesomeness of this playoffs with the finish Reddick had, and now he's tearing it down like, okay, I've slept on it. This is trash. It's got to go. And I just thought it was kind of hilarious listening to the saltiness of him. We got about a minute left, and then we'll have to stop recording. And we'll have to make a part two.
Yeah, definitely part two.
But yeah, I just wanted to pull that up for anybody who hadn't seen it. I just think it definitely accounts for things like we saw on Friday night, where they're out there for afternoon practice, and in comes barreling two of your championship contenders plus owner title contender, and all through no fault of their own. Granted, that's racing in every race, but to have that decide your championship, had that ultimately ended Allgar's chances, that's not really fair. So,
Yeah,
anything you want to say before we wrap our first one, and then we'll go to a
I
part
don't know if
two?
I have time, do
Yeah. All right.
I?
So I'll
Well,
stop this one, and then we'll start another one. We'll
all
have
right.
part two. All right. Be back in a minute, guys.